Dalal Street gains for the fourth straight week, with the Nifty and the Sensex gaining 2%. Banks outperform while midcaps underperform. On Editors Roundtable, we decode the week on Dalal Street. We put the spotlight on the massive promoter stake sales that happened. We take stock of the telecom tariffs. I'm Reema Tendulkar. With me, Prashant, Anuj, Nimesh, and we've got N Jayakumar, Group CEO and MD at Prime Securities. Hi guys.
Hi.
How are you feeling after this week?
Quite good actually, because I think the market this week was quite strong. All through this week, except today, when the market actually did reverse of what it's been doing for last 4 days. For last 4 days, it was giving you an opportunity in the first 15 minutes and then closing at the highs. Today, it gave you an opportunity to actually book profit in the first 15 minutes and close at the low. I think the only sort of sour point for me is the way the markets become extremely elevated now in terms of FI long positioning and the put-call ratio. Otherwise, I think the market seems to be quite fine with sector rotation. So.
You know, it looked like a very eventful week, right, Reema? You're back from your holiday. Reliance hitting a market cap of 21 lakh crore.
Cement, telecom.
ICICI Bank entered $1 billion.
How you said it. Reema is back and Reliance.
And you saw what happened to telecom as well. In fact, you know, even ICICI Bank entered the $100 billion market cap. So clearly, you know, this week was all about large caps, right? The mid caps took a bit of a breather. Leadership is back in the large cap frontline names. Reliance, Bharti, ICICI Bank, all have done well this week. So that was one big, you know, theme to watch out for. I guess, you know, Anuj will talk more about that, but I've been highlighting this. The promoter stake sale goes unabated, right? I mean, massive selling coming in from the promoters and private equity investors. But I think it was an eventful week from a sports point as well, where we entered the finals now, so that's something
Anuj is already ready for tomorrow.
It's quite an interesting week, so to speak.
I anchored like that, Reema, on Awaz, the last show. Because, you know, I anchored like this yesterday and we won, so I sort of thought that, you know, let it be the lucky charm. But Jakes, how are you feeling about the market?
So I think it's a slightly different take I have on this, which is that usually the frontliners move up when money flows in.
Yeah.
And then the mid caps and the small caps catch up. This rally, if you see the last 4 or 5 years, has been exactly the opposite. The frontliners, other than during COVID, actually, only during that time the frontliners were bought into. But after that has been the frontliners waiting because they were the over-owned space. So the retail public didn't go into the over-owned space. They went into the small and mid cap. So the rally has been kind of fueled by that. And now, as and when you sort of pause to take breath, people say, you know what, now the frontliners seem inexpensive compared to historical averages or, you know, traditional means, and therefore people step in. So since post the elections, new money has walked in, which is from overseas to some extent. I think that money is going into the traditionally overowned, and therefore the large caps paradoxically are playing catch up to with the front end with the small and mid caps. So that's
it's great that there's always something to rotate into, right? I mean, because there's large caps, mid caps, small caps. I mean, it's like a rolling wave of money which goes from one thing to the other. Jakes, I'm going to come to you for more, but for our viewers, let me just sort of wrap out the week, but because it's also the end of the month, right? So it's been a great week. Nifty is up 2, Bank Nifty is up 1.2%, small cap index. You would have thought that small caps and mid caps, and we were saying, well, they did take a bit of a backseat, but it's all relative because the small cap index Friday to Friday is up 0.8%. Sectorally, it's interesting. I mean, one sector which has sort of received very little commentary is IT services. IT services index Friday to Friday is up 3%. And of course, they'll be first off the earnings block. Private bank index, 1%. PSU bank index, by the way, down about 0.5% for the week. Now, real estate, some of the sort of hot sectors, real estate and metals took a backseat 2.5 lower on real estate, metals down 1.7, and PSU banks, which were lower as well. Now to the month, guess what? The Nifty is up 1,500 points in the month of June. That's about 6.5%, right? I mean, 1st of June when we began seems like a distant memory now. But we're up 1,500. Bank Nifty is up 3,000 points. That's 7%. And now, of course, we get into the earnings season, etc. This point that Anuj mentioned, and I've also been making on the FI positioning, I mean, it gives you a sense. It doesn't do very much. It doesn't pinpoint the top or the bottom. But the fact is, FII positioning in index futures on the 4th of June, going into that election verdict, they were short 3.5 lakh contracts, and now it's swung to the other extreme. As of Thursday's close, and we'll get the data for Friday as well, they long 3.2 contracts. The graphics are on your screen. as I said, it's a pointer. Shorts in the system means that somebody covers as the market falls, and it's kind of one-sided right now. And I just want to, its budget is, of course, we don't even have the date of the budget, but it'll happen sometime in the second half of, July. But the point is, markets are assuming right now, and Jakes, correct me if I'm wrong, that everything is, they've assumed that it's continuity from the, we've not heard from, the leaders, the policy makers about what the next, their vision for the next 5 years, which I think we will hear in the budget. So I don't know if you should account for a little bit of that. What's your sense?
I think right now what's holding center stage is this old adage which I kind of follow, which is, if I were to ask you the difference between stocks and commodities, in commodities, as prices go up, demand goes down because people find it expensive to convert, and contrary wise, if prices fall, the demand goes up. In stocks, it's exactly the opposite. As prices go up, the greed kicks in. So the demand actually goes up with prices going up. So people are now feeling that they need to be in the market. There are enough and more small town stories of people having made significantly more than their salaries would have allowed them to do. And from that perspective, I think there's more money coming into the markets, which is a good long-term trend. But even today, we are a tad under 5% in terms of household savings into equity. So there's a long way to go. But there will be periods, and I'm kind of surprised that the market is going up the way it is, because there are enough and more of the quote-unquote smart guys, the PE funds, the venture capital guys, the promoters. On a daily basis, there are 3 or 4 blocks, and people are taking them at smaller and smaller discounts compared to the past.
Absolutely.
So that's a point of some worry.
Actually, that's what I was coming to now, because I was having this interview with Rhythm Desai, and I think I had this conversation with you also, that you have clearly DIs who are buying, the retail investor who's buying non-stop. In fact, the biggest buying came on the panic day, 21,000 crores. And now you have FIs also turning on the buy side. So who's selling finally? And it's the corporate, it's the insider who's selling now. And if you look at promoter selling in 2024 till now, we have reached 65,000 crores. And we are halfway through the year. Remember, the record so far has been 2020 when we had 78,000 crores of selling. 2023 was 48,000 crores. 2022 was pretty bad actually. 25,000 crores, bad in terms of the number. Good for the market in one way. But this year it's been 65,000 crores. Some of the major block deals. Indus Tower, and Indus Tower is the best example, a block deal which happened in a non-block window, and still the price refused to fall, and today in fact you saw stock actually hitting a fresh 52-week high. Emphasis saw 6,600 crores of block deal. Polycab this morning saw a big block deal. There's Inox Wind, Happiest Minds where the promoter sold some stake, SBFC Finance, KFin Tech, Gujarat Fluoro, KNR Construction. Everyday Nimesh and D Street chatter is referring to some of the other block deal. I think for Monday he's already alerted us about Havells block deal, for example.
But let me throw something there, which is the other side of this.
Yes.
Which is that for family offices that are raising money through block deals, presumably they're going into private equity, presumably they're going into funds, presumably they're going to AIFs. It's not that people are selling and getting out. What they're doing is they're kind of encashing a certain portion of the family wealth and going back into a whole bunch of, which you don't get to see on a...
Diversification in that sense.
It's diversification, that's one. Number 2, again very interestingly, that retail is for the first time seeing the joys of sort of having its feet wet in multiple stocks.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I think that's a big you see when, for instance, a Vodafone 18% block
11 rupee FPO you get at 17 or 18 within 1 month.
2 months.
Or so.
No, Irida, for instance, I keep quoting this. People couldn't find a good reason to buy it at 50. It's trading close to 200. I don't even know the price, but it's like, it's like a huge hit on your so-called intelligence and intellectual arrogance that some of us boast of. But the point I wanted to make was, with every single promoter selling, there's also a free float increasing. So there is an MSCI readjustment. So this Indus, for instance, is a classic case where 19% dissipate into the market, but 4% got added to MSCI.
Correct.
So there is this constant adjustment of free float, and India is becoming to that extent a far deeper market.
In that sense, this is also a unique bull market, right? Which is creating a scenario where something like a Vodafone Idea, has been a company which 2 or 3 years back looked like it was going to be dead, and all of a sudden now they are repaying government, repaying vendors through equity, and everyone's sort of happy in that.
So I might remind you that famous airline shut about 10 years ago, or maybe it was 12 years ago. Till 2 years ago, the stock was trading at 100 rupees.
Yes.
Jet. So equity is that optionality, right? But Vodafone is not exactly that kind of thing, because to the extent that there is government support and etc. I think equity is swamping the system. To my mind, it's the equivalent of the Yes Bank in the telecom space, where large amounts of equity. So nobody is bothering about ROE, etc. right now. People are talking about survival, which is a...
Jakes, other thing which I want to ask you, what do you make of this cement deal? RKD has sold out its entire 20% stake. They've raised 1,800 crores. I mean, not only RKD selling stake in India Cement, but in general, like look at an example of like Polycab. Promoters just sold 2% and they've raised 2,000 crores. That's the kind of money the promoters are saying by selling a small stake. And that's, as you rightly pointed out, coming back into the equity market largely.
In some form or shape.
In some form or the other. What's your take on the cement as a space now?
So the cement space, I think no analyst could actually find logic as to buying this, other than the fact that as the big boys are consolidating, the group that bought into it could not actually see any other group getting in and occupying the center space in the south. Right. So to an extent, it's a preemptive deal, which is why I think there's been some terminology used about financial investment, etc. Yeah. So at one level, it is financial. I guess over a period of time, given the age of the existing promoter in India Cements, maybe this will result in a controlled transaction, but it's not a cheap transaction. Yeah. And it actually flies in the face of logic of $70 and $80 a ton. So I think RKD is selling out. I mean, he's a smart investor. He's made his money. He's got out. But the preemptive nature of this deal is what is interesting. That this deal was not, it was as important for them not to see anybody else walk in. And to that extent, to spend 1,800, 2,000 crores and have a foothold there and prevent anybody else from coming in is a good step, what I would say.
Interesting corporate battle perhaps brewing over there. But Nimesh, over to you now. Some of the key events on Dalal Street that we saw this week.
We spoke as well, right? Briefly about this was a week of large caps coming back. Mid caps have taken a bit of a setback. So kind of a week when the big boys have participated and have taken the leadership now. The other big event was the cement consolidation. Prashant was bang on in putting out that news that there's going to be a large deal, and that's consumed, right? So again, this is going to be a big theme within the cement sector, as even Jakes pointed out. The large caps the larger players will just consolidate and eat out the smaller players. So again, the traction seems to be back, and people are now focusing which could be the next potential candidate in the cement space. So that's something to track. Telecom, you highlighted throughout the day, but again, it's a big event even for a telecom sector point of view. A 20% hike is something which, while the street was anticipating, it's something now it's a reality, right? So again, telecom to my mind would be a big event to watch going forward as well. And again, the whole point of promoters selling out, PE selling out, that's been a big talking point. It looks like it'll finally come to an end early next week, because then the cool-off will start for most of the promoters as well. So I guess next week onwards, we'll be back to reality of earnings and numbers.
Every day, 2:50 when Nimesh comes on these
says what else but
I say,
blocks?
well, they started with blocks. I mean, it's just so incredible, right?
Incredible.
It also talks about the maturity of the market. Sorry to interrupt you, but
please.
That markets see promoters buying and selling as two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely.
In the past, promoters selling would mean, my God, this would be
negative.
Would trigger a panic. I mean, especially, but now small, large, big, all companies.
Yeah.
It's a logical thing, right? You want to diversify, you want to take some chips off the table. This could be for charitable purpose. This could be just for wealth conservation. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So I think that's also a sign of maturity of the markets.
Yes, in that point of the promoter selling out and PE selling out, how would you classify the MNC selling stake and the local promoter selling stake? Because we had someone from the mutual fund industry last week, and they said it's a great opportunity to buy into MNCs because normally they don't get that kind of liquidity. Is there a way to differentiate between?
I think if you look at some of the smaller MNCs which have been selling, stakes to go down to 51%. To my mind, equally about 15 years ago, people would say control at any cost. Yeah. And you would have, even the Unilevers of the world buying 4% if possible. Today it's exactly the opposite, right? Because they're not getting these price earning multiples in their markets. So they think it's a perfectly logical thing to release some capital here. Vodafone's been doing it. Some of the smaller engineering companies have been doing it. And to my mind, that again is a sign of the rich domestic liquidity that exists here. That people are willing to say that it's good management, okay, buying it a little expensive, but take a 5-year view, it'll probably play out.
Whirlpool, Nimesh,
Yeah.
I don't know the price. It was
Whirlpool sold 24%.
It's double since then.
It's double since then.
It's double since then. So the parent sold at 1,200 rupees, 24% stake, and today it's 2,400.
Yeah.
So there is a big talking point in the market as well. How come they don't know that Bosch is looking to buy them out,
Yeah.
and they sold the Indian parent at Indian company at 1200. And at the
So
start it had
much
been
for the
400.
theory that the promoter is always,
Exactly.
I think it's quite incredible. Nimesh, I just want to ask you one thing. I mean, you on telecom. What's the view from people that you've spoken with?
So-
Was today just a profit booking, and
So
is there
Prashant,
more
I spoke to
interest?
a lot of investors as well, even in today's market.
Yeah.
While Vodafone was down, Bharti was marginally down, but the overall sense is this is the big telecom tariff repair, and from here the numbers will start coming up. So a lot of actually larger investors, the FIs and all, seems to be very bullish on telecom as a space.
Okay, here's what we'll do. We'll slip into a very short break. We'll continue to talk about telecom and many other themes on Dalal Street, so stay with us.